All right, now let's take a look at that question 1. Here, let me comment this so it's easier to see. That's question 0. This is question 1. And remember, the whole idea behind question 1 is I'm giving you some class you've never seen before. You get to see all of the methods of that class and other important information. Can you use those methods to do something with a console program? Now that sounds very open-ended, but it actually won't be, and you'll see what that looks like in just a second. Let's go over to the test, or the review test, and here we go, sample create a program question. Look, here we're given a class that we've never seen before. It's called stock purchase. What kind of things can you actually do with a stock purchase? Let's look at some of these methods. Look, there's the constructor, so I know how to make a new stock purchase. I can get the number of shares, I can get the symbol, the stock can split. Ooh, what does that mean? I can buy more shares of this particular stock, and I can get the total dividend amount. Now, I will say this question suffers a bit from something we generally try to avoid on any APCSA free response questions, which is that you might actually have a slight advantage here if you know something about stocks. We really try to avoid problems where any background knowledge is required because it's actually unfair, right? We're not teaching this class about stocks. We're teaching it about how to code. So there'll never be a question on something super specific like the rules of water polo or how to bake a cake that someone could have a distinct advantage on. But this is just a practice question, so we're just going to roll with it. So here's this class called stock purchase. And then look, I'm actually given some stuff to do, which is I'm going to write a console program called ConsoleProgram that does exactly this. So again, this isn't a free form question. You don't get to choose what you want to do with a stock purchase. You're going to do exactly what it tells you to do. Now, one thing that's a little different about this question, usually when we make a console program in BlueJ, it kind of auto-generates that little header and the run method. So I don't have to worry about typing that. On your test, you will have to type those lines of code. Now, you're thinking in your head, oh my gosh, wait, you're making me memorize that. Well, there's one little trick that you can do to not memorize that. We know that question 1 is, given a class, can you write a console program? Remember though, that question 2 is, given a console program, can you write a class? So guess what's down here in question 2, if we just scroll down, is an example of a console program. And look, here's that whole header that you need to write. So you don't really have to memorize it. There's an example of it on exactly the next page. So we will have to, for our question 1, wrap everything in this first line and in the run method. So let's start there. Public class, I believe we were supposed to make it called stock program, extends console program. And then public void run. And all of our code is going to go inside here. Now, let's look at exactly what we're supposed to do. What's the first thing I do is I purchase 250 shares of love, which is the symbol for Southwest. If you didn't know why is the symbol for Southwest LUV, it's actually a little cheesy. It's because Southwest loves to fly. Aw, how cute. How do I purchase 250 shares of LUV? Well, don't I have to make a new stock purchase? So let's do this. Stock purchase SW equals new stock purchase. This is calling the constructor. How many parameters does the constructor take? 2. I first have to give it the symbol and then the initial number of shares. And it looks like symbol is LUV and I'm doing 250. Careful when you're giving it the symbol. You do have to put this in quotations because it's a string. Great. There's my first line. What's the next thing I do? I purchase 1,000 shares of APPL, which is the symbol for Apple. So let's do stock purchase Apple equals new stock purchase APPL 1,000. The Apple stock splits. Well, I don't really know that much about stocks, but if you scrolled up and you had to guess which method we're going to use for this, look, there's actually a method called split. How can I make the apple stock split? I have to do apple.split. It's always instance.method. What do I do next? I buy 100 more shares of Apple stock. What method looks relevant for this? Look, there's a method called buy more shares. Can I just say buy more shares? No, I have to do apple.buy more shares, and I think I'm buying 200 more shares. What happens next? Oh, it was supposed to be 100. Whoops, let's change that to 100. What happens next? The Apple stock splits again. Ooh, I know that one. Let's do apple.split. What's next after this? I buy 200 more shares of Southwest stock. So let's do sw.buy more shares 200. And then I have this last bullet point, which looks a little more involved. It says Southwest pays a dividend of 15 cents per share, and Apple pays a dividend of 40 cents per share. And I'm supposed to print out a line that looks like this. Well, if you scroll up, you might remember that there was a method called get total dividend amount. This is based on that dividend per share, which is different for each company. We can see we're actually given that value to pass in as a parameter. I could do this in one longer line, but I'm going to kind of space it out to make my life a little easier. Let's do double total equals, let's get the dividend amount for Southwest. So sw.get, I think it's get total dividend amount. Yep. Get total dividend amount. And I'm going to put 0.15 plus apple.get total dividend amount 0.4. And now I'm not kidding that when I say to do exactly that, we're going to print out exactly that. So let's do print line. I earned with a $sign total from from all my stock. And there we go. That's what we were asked to do. You can see how this is really testing that we know how to use a class we've never seen before. You weren't asked to memorize the stock purchase class. You didn't even know it before we came in and did this problem. But because we understand how to use abstractions we've never seen before, we can actually write a program like this. Now, notice that I was kind of scrolling up and down a lot. When you do your test in person, you are going to have a paper version of it. You're probably going to end up flipping back and forth a whole bunch between the two pages to see kind of, oh, what's being asked of me? Oh, what's the relevant method in that class to use? So that's pretty common. You might even kind of tear the pages out of the staple to make it a little bit easier to see. And there's the create a program question.